Hi, my name is Carl Pearson, and this video describes the 9 federal statutes that are needed as soon as possible to shorten what otherwise is going to be a very, very long depression. The longer we have to wait for the legislation, the greater injury to an already suffering economy rapidly heading for a depression with about 60 million persons unemployed or underemployed, which winds up to be about, I guess, slightly more than 30% of the workforce. And this is worsening daily. I'm 83 years old, a high school dropout. I received my BA magna cum laude in political science. I'm a graduate of Harvard Law School and have been a small business owner for 74 years, starting with a paper route at age 9 in North Platte, Nebraska. Also, I ran or sought nomination on major third-party tickets for New York Attorney General. I came in third once, New York City Mayor, and U.S. President. Of course, I never had a chance to win, and I knew that. I only wanted to find out more about the political process and what I could do to maybe take advantage of it, not to win, but to at least meet some of the people who were going to win, but nothing worked out. I wasted my time, I guess. Today is my 52nd day of self-imposed quarantine or stay-at-home lockdown. We have more than 1,200,000 confirmed cases and 70,000 deaths due to the coronavirus. I'm one of the most vulnerable and take quarantine quite seriously as a result. Here are the 9 most important statutes which need to be enacted right away, and in somewhat order of their importance, plus a final observation that might pull both sides together. 1. We have to take control of the coronavirus as soon as possible, through all means possible, as a federal project, including stay-at-home compliance, postponing business openings until safe, and then with appropriate safety precautions when openings are allowed, development of vaccines, obtaining testing of 2 types for all, and surveillance to be able to trace contacts and isolate persons who have had contact with positive testing individuals. All of this needs to be done through a federal coronavirus SAR and federal monetary appropriations and use of the Defense Production Act to create manufacturing facilities in the U.S. when manufacturers are unwilling to manufacture the needed products. I have discussed this at length in my video number 20. 2. Small business has no financial capacity to survive without massive federal help. That's important to realize. Small businesses on the average have enough in owner savings to last about 4 weeks or so. It does no good at all to pay for employees under PPP, that is the Payroll Protection Program, if the small business itself does not survive. We need to pass legislation very quickly and to some extent automatically so that payments are made automatically upon application. That covers the fixed or overhead expenses of the small business itself and the personal expenses of the owner to the extent that he or she would have paid such expenses from profits of the small business. You can't save a small business without covering the 2 overheads, business and personal, to the extent of lost profits. I cover this topic in video number 14. 3. PPP is needed in an adequate amount for small business employees and the independent contractors dependent on small businesses. This program should not permit employees of big business to participate. We are trying to save small business, the backbone of the nation's economy. Big business employees already received PPP actually in probably what could be called a token amount, admittedly. Also, big business has huge amounts of money to participate in paying the costs of saving their employees. And the purpose of the needed legislation is to save small businesses and the jobs and independent contractors dependent on small businesses. So we need to have special legislation only that relates to small business. 4. Establish the coronavirus czar, that's CZAR, as a quasi-governmental agency similar to the Postal Service, which technically is called an independent federal agency, and Amtrak, which is a quasi-governmental agency, and provide sufficient funding at the outset. This seems to be the way to have the federal government take over the essential tasks that need to be done, which they're not doing now, and to do so as fast as possible, and to try to limit adverse activities by the president or others. It should be noted that 1 to 2 days ago, President Trump disbanded his coronavirus task force for the purpose of setting up a task force to open up businesses, which is adverse to the idea of trying to have a control of the coronavirus until it's appropriate to do so, and opening up businesses now doesn't seem to be the way of doing it unless there is proper safeguards and distancing taken into account. 5. Make sure that the banks don't go under. Homeowners have less money to pay their mortgages and are going to be foreclosed and lose their homes. What is needed is a statute that pays the mortgages during pandemic-related unemployment, and as to loss in pay rate when employed, to be expected as the economy declines, to prevent foreclosure during the pandemic and enable the banks to survive the required financial tests, which, if they fail to meet those tests, they become insolvent and they're taken over by the government. So unless the mortgages are being paid, the banks would go under. Perhaps a reduction in interest rates could be enacted, and interest rates are now at their low, probably in order for the banks to obtain more performing mortgages. When they reduce the rates, that lowers the monthly payment and makes loans more affordable. So that's probably what's happening anyway, but we need to make more of that. So that's a way of devaluing mortgages to realign them with the diminishing economy. 6. Home and apartment rental agreements need to be adjusted similarly, with concern for the rental property owners and their mortgages. 7. Rent control should be considered. 8. Jobs should be created, especially now with 60 million unemployed or underemployed, and remembering the New Deal programs which were created during the Great Depression. There are 3 types of jobs that should be created in rebuilding America's infrastructure and in dealing with global warming. Millions of jobs are available, many, many, many millions of jobs for those 2 areas of America's infrastructure and global warming. And the first type of job available for those 2 essential areas are work that's done at home, and those jobs should be considered very important because they could be done right now. Hiring could be done right now for jobs that could be done at home. The second type of work would be social distancing compatible, which would have some jobs now, if essential or if if the jobs are considered essential, or if they comply with social distancing and safety requirements. And finally, the third type would be post-pandemic, which means after the pandemic is solved. So there's millions of jobs available. And 9, if there's nothing left to do, unemployed persons could be hired to bring high-speed internet or broadband to places in the U.S. where needed, which means rural areas and Indian reservations for the most part. Finally, my last point is not a statute, but to point out that the elected officials that enact a work program for America would be able to tell voters, perhaps a little bit overstated, that they are responsible for bringing back the U.S. economy even while the pandemic is still taking place. So that should be an incentive for both sides to be able to agree upon that kind of job creation, where millions of jobs could be created in order to handle America's infrastructure and to deal with global warming. Those jobs could be created right now and should be. So, well, I've said what I plan to say, and I'll say so long until my next video.